the storm that changed everything. The wind was cold and wild. Daniel pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders as the sky above turned dark gray. He had been walking through the alien forest for hours, searching for shelter before the rain came. His boots were already wet from the soft ground beneath, and every few steps he slipped a little in the mud. He looked up. Thunder rolled across the sky like a beast growling from the clouds. Then came the first drop. Then another. Then hundreds. BY. Rain poured like a curtain falling from the sky. Daniel ran. He wasn't from this planet. He was just passing through on a survey mission. Alone. He had no team, no help, just his small backpack and an emergency beacon that didn't work. But ahead, through the thick trees, he saw it. A cave. Dark, wide, dry. He didn't think twice. He ran into the mouth of the cave, soaking wet and breathing hard. Inside it was cooler and quiet. The rain echoed softly behind him. He dropped his bag and took a breath. Safe, for now. Or so he thought. Just as he turned to sit against the wall, he heard it. A soft sound like a whimper. Like someone crying but trying not to. Daniel froze. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small flashlight. Slowly, carefully, he pointed it deeper into the cave. The beam of light swept across rocks, dust, and there, eyes. Two glowing silver-blue eyes stared back at him from the shadows. His heart raced. Was it a beast? A cave predator? He raised his light higher. The creature didn't move, it just sat there. As the light reached further, he saw it clearly. It wasn't a monster. It was a woman. An alien woman. She was thin, almost too thin. Her skin was pale purple with light markings down her cheeks. Her arms were wrapped around something small. A child. A tiny alien child. Curled up in her lap, barely breathing. The child looked no older than 3, if human, maybe younger. Daniel didn't move, neither did she. For a long moment there was only silence. Then the woman flinched. She held the child tighter and looked at Daniel with fear in her eyes. She was starving. Weak, wet, scared. Daniel slowly knelt down. He placed his flashlight on the ground and raised both his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. Of course. She didn't understand his words, but maybe she understood his tone. Still watching him, she shifted back slightly, further into the shadows. Daniel opened his backpack slowly and took out a small silver packet, emergency food. He opened it and gently placed it on the cave floor between them. She stared at it. Her lips trembled. Then she looked down at her child. With a shaky hand, she reached forward, took the packet, and brought it back. She sniffed it carefully, then took a tiny bite. Tears filled her eyes, not from the taste but from hunger. She tore a small piece and placed it in the child's mouth. The child barely reacted, but after a moment, swallowed. Daniel watched quietly. He didn't know who she was, or why she was here, but one thing was clear. She had been left to die. Maybe a crash. Maybe she was running from something. But this cave, this cold, empty cave, it wasn't a home. It was a last chance. She looked at Daniel again, her eyes softer now. Then she tried to speak. Her voice was raspy and broken. The translator device on Daniel's wrist caught only part of it. "Help. Us." His breath caught in his throat. He didn't know this woman. He didn't even know her species, but in that moment he knew he couldn't walk away. He reached for his thermal blanket and slowly slid it across the floor to her. She took it and wrapped it around herself and the child. Daniel sat down by the cave wall again, keeping his distance but staying close. The rain outside kept falling. The forest was dark, but inside the cave something had changed. He wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. Tomorrow he would ask questions, try to understand, But tonight, he would stand guard, because whatever had forced a mother and child into hiding was still out there, and he had a bad feeling it might come looking for them soon. The cave was quiet. Daniel sat near the entrance, his back against the wall, listening to the rain as it whispered through the trees outside. But his eyes were on them, the alien mother and her child. She had fallen asleep finally, holding the small child close to her chest under the blanket he gave her. Her breathing was slow, soft, tired. But the child never moved. No crying, no sound, not even when the thunder shook the sky. Just a small body wrapped in her arms, too still. Daniel felt a chill, not from the cold but from fear. He stood up and slowly walked over, careful not to startle the mother. She didn't wake. She was too weak. He looked down at the child. Big eyes, sunken cheeks, a light purple tone to her skin like the mother's but far too pale. Her tiny hand was wrapped around one strand of the woman's hair. Daniel crouched down and placed his hand near the child's chest. Nothing. Then, small breath, slow, faint. She was alive, but barely. Daniel's training kicked in. Back on Earth during his survival course, they were taught how to help injured civilians with limited supplies. He had a few nutrient gels, enough to help in emergencies. He opened one carefully and touched a drop to the child's lips. Nothing. Then, a flicker of movement. The child's lips twitched, but still no sound, not even a whimper. He looked at her again. That wasn't just weakness, that was fear. Deep fear. The kind that shuts your voice inside your body. The kind that makes a child forget how to cry. Who did this to her? Daniel sat back. He didn't know what kind of pain they had been through, but it was clear. This wasn't just about hunger, this was trauma, and something told him they were running from more than starvation. Hours passed. The rain slowed. The mother stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw Daniel still there, her hand tightened around the child. But only for a second. He nodded gently, then pointed to her daughter. "She's not crying," he said softly. "She's too quiet." The alien woman blinked slowly. Her lips moved. She tried to speak again. The translator on Daniel's wrist cracked, then finally caught a few words in a broken whisper. "Danger came in the night." Her voice trembled. "Voices. Metal hands. They took the others." Daniel leaned forward, trying to understand. "They hunted. Females with young." His heart sank. This wasn't just some lost mother hiding in a cave. She had escaped something terrible, a raid, a harvest, maybe even worse. And the child, her daughter, had seen it all. Heard it. Felt it. That's why she didn't cry. She had learned that crying brought pain. Maybe death. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. This planet was supposed to be quiet, abandoned, unclaimed. But someone, something, was out here preying on the helpless. He opened his pack and gave the woman another food pack. She didn't take it for herself. She unwrapped the child slowly and began feeding her in tiny bites, whispering something in her native tongue with shaking lips. The child blinked, swallowed. Still no cry. But this time, a tear rolled down her cheek. Daniel looked away. It was too much. He knew now. He couldn't just leave them. He couldn't call for help either. His comms were still dead, and no ships passed this sector often. If the raiders came back, he clenched his fists. He had one working weapon, 3 thermal charges, and a plan forming in his mind. But first, they needed strength, food, warmth, rest, and hope. As night returned, the wind picked up again. But this time, Daniel didn't feel so alone. He kept the fire low, just enough for warmth. The mother had fallen asleep again. The child, still silent, was now nestled against her belly, sucking weakly on a food straw Daniel gave. He watched them quietly and whispered to himself, If anyone comes back to hurt them, they'll have to go through me first. Morning came slowly. The sky outside the cave was still dark gray and the air smelled of wet leaves and distant smoke. Daniel opened his eyes before the sun rose. He hadn't slept much. His back ached from the cold stone floor, and his eyes were heavy, but his mind was sharp. His ears had caught something in the early hours, a soft crunch outside like a footstep in wet mud. He reached for his pulse blade and quietly stood up. The alien mother and her child were still sleeping, wrapped together in the thermal blanket. The child had moved a little during the night, a small sign of life, a small victory. Daniel moved to the cave entrance and stepped just outside. The air was thick. Fog floated over the forest ground. Trees dripped water from the rain and birds, or something like birds, chirped in the distance. He knelt down. That's when he saw it. A footprint. Not his, not the mother's. Fresh, deep, three-toed. His heart skipped. Then he saw another, just beside the first. They were leading away from the cave. No. Toward it. Something or someone had come during the night. Had watched them. Daniel's grip tightened on his blade. His eyes scanned the forest edge. Nothing moved. But he felt it. They were not alone anymore. He walked a little farther, carefully, following the trail. The track circled the cave. In one place the mud showed a deep mark as if something had knelt there, or waited. He returned inside quickly. The mother woke as soon as he entered. Her eyes locked on his face, worried, alert. Daniel sat near her and pointed to the cave entrance. Someone was here, he said softly. Watching. She flinched. Her hand went to her child's head, gently shielding her. Daniel opened his wrist comm. It was still broken, still silent. No signal. But the small motion sensor on it blinked red. It had detected movement outside, 2 hours ago. The mother tried to speak. Her voice cracked, but the translator caught the words. They wear silver skin, no faces, machines, with a voice like glass. They smell heat. They come when the child cries. Daniel's stomach turned. So that's why she had been so quiet. That's why the girl didn't cry. They had been taught silence. By pain. Machines that hunted sound. Machines that followed cries. Daniel's jaw clenched. This was no accident. Someone was out here using machines to track down alien mothers and children. But why? To experiment? To kill? To sell? He looked at the small child again. Her breathing was better now. Color was slowly returning to her skin. She looked at him this time. Still silent, still scared. But her tiny fingers reached out and grabbed the corner of his jacket. Trust. Daniel's chest felt heavy. He had been alone on this planet just yesterday. Now he had something to fight for. No, someone to fight for. He opened his backpack again and checked supplies. 1 pulse blade, a flare, 2 more food packs, 1 emergency stim, a plasma wire. Not enough for war, but maybe enough for a trap. He turned to the mother. We can't stay here. She shook her head. They search the caves, one by one. He nodded. Then we move, but not far. First, I give them a reason to come. She didn't understand, but she trusted him now. Daniel moved fast. He took mud from outside and smeared it over the walls inside the cave, over their footprints. He covered the fire spot, hid the food wrappers. Then, near the back wall of the cave, he placed the flare and set the plasma wire trap across the entrance. If anything stepped inside too fast, boom. Not enough to kill, but enough to burn and blind. He carried the mother and child gently, using vines and a sling he made to hold the child close to the mother's chest. Then they slipped into the trees. They found a small spot, hidden under thick roots near a fallen log just 30 meters from the cave. Daniel sat with them motionless, eyes locked on the cave entrance. The minutes passed. Then, movement. A figure appeared through the fog, tall, shiny, silver skin, no face. Exactly how she described it. It didn't walk. It floated, softly, smoothly, like a hunter. Then another followed. They paused at the cave mouth. One entered. The trap triggered, a bright flash, a burst of heat, sparks, a scream, like glass shattering. The second machine flew backward, hit a tree, and sparked. Its body twitched, then went still. The first stumbled out, burned, broken, then it turned toward them. It had seen something, or sensed it. Daniel stood up, ready to fight, but the alien mother suddenly reached into her cloak and pulled out a glowing stone. She whispered something, and the stone flashed blue. The machine paused, then turned away. It vanished into the forest. Daniel looked at her, stunned. She smiled weakly. Not all weapons are metal. The fire was gone. The cave was behind them. The forest whispered like a sleeping beast around Daniel and the alien mother. They had escaped the machines. For now. Daniel had found a narrow space beneath a large tree's twisted roots. There, hidden from sight, he laid down leaves for the mother and her child to rest. The child clung to her mother's chest. Too weak to cry, too tired to fear. Daniel checked his supplies again. One food pack, no traps left, and his translator wristband, cracked from the earlier fight. The screen blinked red. Static filled the air whenever the alien mother tried to speak. Words came out broken, twisted, like, "Your sound, protect, we, safe, before, storm, again." It was hard to understand, but her eyes told the truth. She trusted him now. Daniel sighed and sat beside them. He pulled out a tiny screwdriver from his belt. He opened the back of the translator and stared at the small, glowing chips. "Let's fix you," he whispered. His hands worked slowly, carefully. He cleaned the connectors, adjusted the sound filters, and reconnected a loose neural wire. Click. The screen blinked. Then, system reboot. Language memory. Corrupted. Daniel groaned. That meant the translator had forgotten most alien dialects. He would have to rebuild the memory manually, but he had one way to start. He turned to her, pointed to himself. "Daniel." She tilted her head. He tapped his chest again. "Daniel." She stared, then touched her own chest. "Shari," she said, softly. The translator stuttered but managed to match it. Name registered, Shari. Daniel smiled. "Shari, your name is beautiful." She blinked slowly. That word, beautiful, seemed to catch her attention. Then she pointed to the child. Lulo. The name barely escaped her lips. The translator repeated it. Name registered, Lulo, Daniel. Looked at the child. Her small body still trembled slightly, but she was breathing, eating, holding on. That was enough for now. Night came again. Cold wind blew between the trees. But Daniel had built a small heat barrier using stones in his remaining power cell. It wasn't much, but it gave them warmth. Shari looked at the heat and then at Daniel. She touched her own wrist, showing him a broken device like his. "Tracker," she said. "They used it to find us when Lulo cried." Daniel's heart dropped. So it wasn't just the machines listening. There was a network, a system. Someone was behind this, a group, a market, or worse, a warlord who hunted refugees. He asked, "Why you? Why here?" The translator struggled but caught enough. Ship crashed. We ran. There were more of us. We scattered. My mate, gone. I had Lulo. I ran into the dark. The others didn't make it. She looked down at her child, brushing her soft forehead. I hid. For days. Ate roots. Then stopped. I prayed. Daniel was quiet. Shari looked at him again. Then you came. He didn't respond. His throat felt tight. He hadn't planned to be a hero. He just wanted shelter from the rain. But now, he was the shelter. Later, while Shari and Lulo slept, Daniel tapped into his wristband again. He rewired a few circuits using parts from his spare beacon. Finally, a weak signal pulsed, not enough to reach orbit, but maybe enough for a nearby ship. He tried to boost it using the heat barrier's power source. Ping. A map appeared. It showed a mining station, abandoned, 10 kilometers northeast. It might have comms, maybe supplies, maybe danger, but it was their best chance. He looked at the sleeping mother and child. Could they walk 10 kilometers through hostile forest? He didn't know, but he would carry them if he had to. Morning broke with golden light through the trees. Shari opened her eyes to find Daniel packing. She looked confused. He tapped the screen and showed her the map. We go. Help may be there. She nodded slowly, then reached into her blanket. She pulled out something Daniel hadn't seen before. A silver pendant, glowing faintly. It looked like a small, cracked sun. This was my mate's, she whispered. He said, if I meet a protector, give it. She placed it in Daniel's hand. It was warm, strangely heavy for its size. Daniel closed his fingers around it. Shari looked at him. You are not like others. He smiled gently. No, I'm human. The morning was quiet, too quiet. Daniel had traveled many planets, but he had learned one thing. When the birds go silent, danger is near. He held the scanner close. The signal from the mining station blinked faintly in the corner of the screen. Still there. Still their only chance. Beside him, Shari gently held her daughter, Lulo, who now had enough strength to open her eyes. She was silent, as always, but her fingers gripped Daniel's glove when he checked her pulse. They were still under the cover of trees, slowly heading toward the old station, 10 kilometers away. It wasn't far for a soldier like Daniel, but with a weak mother and half-conscious child in his arms, it felt like walking through fire. Still, he didn't stop. Then, it came. A low hum, a vibration in the air. Daniel stopped mid-step and raised his head. Above the trees, the leaves began to shake, not from wind, but from something approaching, something heavy, something flying. Daniel's gut twisted. He pressed his back to a tree and pulled Shari down low. Stay still, he whispered. Then they heard it clearly. Engines. Not soft, not smooth. These were hunter engines, old models, loud, ruthless, the kind used by war scavengers and illegal bounty clans. A ship passed above, gray and rusted, 4 searchlights under its belly. Daniel's mind raced. How did they find them again? Was there a tracker? Was it the pendant? His gear? Shari saw the panic in his eyes and suddenly reached into her cloak. She pulled out a thin black strip, half metal, half crystal, and handed it to Daniel. I took it from Lulo's back. Yesterday, she whispered. Daniel stared. A biotag, embedded in the child. That's how they keep finding you, he muttered. He dropped it on the forest floor and smashed it under his boot. Too late. The ship slowed above the trees. Lights searched the jungle below. Then, a loud metallic voice echoed through the air. Survivors detected. Return at once. Mercy. Protocol active. Shari shook her head fiercely. Lies, she whispered. They say mercy. Then they take. Daniel had no doubt. He tapped his wristband. No signal now. The ship was jamming the frequency. He had no backup. No escape pod. No safe zone. Just a sick child. A mother, and one last idea. He turned to Shari. There's a cave system near the station. I saw it on the map, underground. Shari nodded. We used those caves before. Deep tunnels. Daniel looked around quickly, then pointed. We head that way. I'll lead. You stay low. Hold Lulo tight. Shari adjusted her grip and moved like she had done it 100 times. She had. That's what survival looked like. They ran through the trees. The sound of engines followed. Branches snapped under their boots, leaves whipped their faces. Daniel's arms burned from holding a weapon and guiding Shari at once. Then he saw it. A rock ridge covered in moss. He pushed it aside, revealing a narrow crack. The entrance to the cave. In! Shari squeezed through first. Daniel followed, placing small rocks behind them. Not enough to stop a machine, but enough to buy time. Inside, the air was cold and damp. The tunnel curved downward. They walked, fast and careful, with only Daniel's dim light. Behind them, the sound of metal. Legs landed on forest soil. Search units had been deployed. Deeper into the cave, they found a larger chamber. Daniel set Lulo down on a dry patch and gave her water. She drank now. Slowly. Shari leaned on the wall, breathing hard. Daniel turned to the entrance and placed his last flare, set to trigger if anything crossed the line. He looked back at them. This wasn't just escape anymore, it was a stand. Then something strange happened. The cave wall lit up faintly. Symbols appeared in glowing blue. Shari gasped. This is old ground from my people before the war. Daniel stared. What does it mean? She pressed her hand to the wall. A hidden panel opened. Inside was a long box. She pulled out a metal rod covered in crystal veins. A guardian staff, she whispered. It only lights for those who protect. She handed it to him. Daniel held it. It pulsed once, then glowed brighter in his hand. Shari's eyes widened. You are chosen, she said. Daniel didn't feel chosen. He felt exhausted, but he knew one thing. He wasn't running anymore. If the machines came, they'd find him waiting. The cave felt like a beating heart. Hot. Silent. Waiting to burst. Daniel stood near the mouth of the hidden tunnel, the guardian staff pulsing gently in his grip. The alien weapon felt alive, warm to the touch, humming, softly like it could hear the danger coming. Shari knelt near Lulo, feeding her sips of warmed water. The child's skin had color again. Her eyes followed Daniel's every move, not with fear anymore, but with something new. Hope. Far above the cave, the sky echoed with engines once more. But Daniel wasn't running this time. He was preparing. He placed the flare at the entrance, its sensor now tied to a tripwire made from the vines they'd collected. He had the staff. He had a plan, and he had nothing left to lose. Shari watched him with quiet focus. Then she crawled to his side and pulled a crystal vial from her cloak. It shimmered faintly. Flame salt, she whispered. My people used it long ago. Burns, hot, blinds fast. She handed it to him without hesitation. Daniel nodded. Good. We'll make them regret coming. She looked into his eyes. No. We'll make them remember who we are. They didn't have to wait long. The cave trembled slightly as metal feet touched the ground above. A mechanical voice echoed through the earth. Target location confirmed. Proceed with capture. Daniel turned to Shari. Stay with Lulo. No. Matter what happens, don't run. Shari didn't ask questions. She only placed her hand gently on his shoulder before returning to her daughter. Daniel stepped into position. A sharp light pierced the cave as the first machine dropped down. Its body was long and thin, with spider-like limbs and a head that twisted in every direction. It scanned the space. It didn't see him, yet. He moved first. Daniel tossed the vial of flame salt against the far wall. It exploded with a bright, blinding flash of white fire. The machine screamed. A terrible, high-pitched sound like metal tearing. Daniel struck. The guardian staff came alive in his hands, surging with power. The crystal veins along its shaft lit up as he swung it at the machine's leg. It snapped off in one blow. The machine tumbled, sparks flying. It tried to crawl, but Daniel drove the staff straight into its core. A burst of blue light shot out. The machine stopped moving, but more were coming. Another dropped in, larger than the first. This one had built-in cannons on its arms and a protective shell of scorched metal. It landed hard, shaking the cave. Daniel ducked behind a stone as it fired, blasts of red plasma ripping through the air. The cave wall cracked. He had seconds. He grabbed a rock, set his small flare underneath it, and rolled it across the floor toward the machine. As the bot advanced, the flare beeped once, then erupted in heat and smoke. Blinded, the machine fired wildly, hitting the ceiling. Stones collapsed. Daniel jumped forward, swinging the staff like a hammer. The crystal edge sliced through the weapon's arm. Sparks exploded. The bot reeled, one final hit, and its power core shattered. Dust filled the cave. The air burned with smoke and glowing sparks. Daniel staggered back, panting. But then, silence. No more machines. Only his heartbeat. Only breathing. Then, a voice, small and soft. Daniel. He turned. It was Lulo. For the first time she had spoken. Shari wept, holding her daughter close. Daniel dropped the staff and sat on the ground. The fire in his chest, part rage, part relief, slowly faded. They were alive, and the machines were gone. For now. But deep in his mind, Daniel knew this wasn't the end. If two had found them, more would follow. They needed to move. Fast. But as he looked at Lulo, sitting up, eyes bright, and Shari, now holding his hand like family, he knew something else too. He wasn't just a traveler anymore. He wasn't just a fighter. He was theirs now. The cave was silent now. Ash and broken metal covered the ground. The air smelled like smoke and scorched stone, but in the center of it all, life had returned. Shari sat against the wall, holding Lulo close. The child was awake. Her tiny fingers played with Daniel's jacket sleeve, her lips curved in a small, tired smile. She had spoken last night. Her first word, his name, Daniel. He would never forget it. Morning light peeked through a crack in the cave ceiling. The storm was gone. The engines had fallen silent. No more machines. But Daniel knew this peace was not forever. The machines would return. Their signal would not stay hidden. And Lulo still needed real medical help. He checked his map. The mining station, only 3 kilometers now. We moved today, he said quietly. Shari nodded. We follow you. Daniel hesitated, then looked at her. You don't have to. Once we reach the station, I can call for a ship. You could go home, if you have one. Shari looked at Lulo. Then she looked at him. You are our home now. Daniel froze. No one had said that to him before, not even on Earth. His life had been filled with travel, war, missions, and silence. But now, these two had taken root in his world like a seed breaking through stone. He gave a small nod, not in words, but in his heart. He had already decided. They moved just after sunrise. Lulo was light and warm in Daniel's arms. Shari walked beside him, tired but strong. The forest around them had changed. The birds had returned. The sun filtered through green leaves like hope falling from the sky. And then, they saw it, the mining station. Old, rusted, hidden behind vines, but standing. A tower leaned slightly, and one door was half open. But the satellite dish on the roof still blinked, still alive. Daniel smiled. We made it. Inside, the station was dusty but safe. Daniel found an old console, wiped it clean, and hooked his wristband to it. The screen flickered. Static. Then, connection. Alliance Outpost 77. Respond. The voice came through after 6 seconds. This is Outpost 77. Who is this? Survivor. Human male. 2 alien civilians with me. 1 child. Requesting medical evac and safe transport. A pause. Confirmed. Rescue ship arriving in 1 hour. Daniel let out a long breath. He turned back to Shari and Lulo. We're going home. Shari tilted her head. Who's home? He smiled. We'll find one. Together. The hour passed slowly. Daniel found medical gel and treated Lulo's wounds. He wrapped Shari's foot, which had blistered during their walk. She didn't complain, once. She just watched him with quiet eyes. Eyes that had once only known fear, now full of calm. The rescue ship came with a soft roar. A white vessel, clean and wide, hovered above the station. A ramp lowered. 2 medics ran down. They froze when they saw Daniel holding the alien child, then saw her tiny hand wave gently at them. The medics knelt. The leader looked up at Daniel. You brought them this far? Daniel nodded. The medic said, Most people wouldn't have. Daniel's voice was low. Most people weren't there. They boarded the ship. Shari sat beside him holding Lulo. The child was already asleep again. Safe, warm, alive. Daniel stared out the window as the jungle disappeared beneath them. This place had nearly killed them, but it had also given him something no war, no mission, no medal ever did, a reason to stay, a reason to care, a reason to protect. Back in orbit, the medics scanned Lulo. She'll recover fully, one said, but she'll need time. Shari looked at Daniel. She has time, now. Daniel didn't say anything. He only reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. 1 week later, the 3 of them stood on a quiet green world offered by the Alliance for Refugee Settlement. Shari wore clean clothes now. Lulo ran barefoot through the grass, laughing, a sound Daniel would carry forever in his memory. Daniel had a new ID tag on his wrist. It read, Guardian, Civilian Dependent, Lulo, Species Code 9A3. The officer at the desk smiled at him. Your record shows you were alone. Daniel glanced at the mother and child beside him. Not anymore. As the sun set, Lulo ran up to Daniel and tugged his hand. Home? She asked. He smiled. Yes. We're home. And for the first time in a long time, he meant it.